What's the first question?
All right, the first question is, what do you think is different about reading in Spanish than reading in English?
Well, in Spanish you have a lot more like accents and pronunciation rather than English, and also it's a little more like you're like with English you can like get the answer like with reading, like you know the words and you hear them all the time, but when you're first learning Spanish you don't really know them, and so it's kind of trickier to learn them at first.
It's harder than English
Why?
because you have to like think about it more, and it's not my first language, so I have to like translate it in my head a little bit more.
It's kind of fun because I learned it, so yeah, I like reading in Spanish.
My experience in reading with Spanish class. Last year, during my junior year Spanish 4 class, we did a lot of reading, much more than in Spanish 3 the year before. We read a full book, Cuando era puertorriqueña, which was a sometimes great, sometimes hectic experience. There was a lot of reading every night, more pages than my English class would be giving me at that time. But it was a rewarding experience. I definitely felt like I got a lot out of it. I definitely felt like I left with a better understanding of the language afterwards. It was good. I liked it.
So last year we read Cuando era puertorriqueña, and mostly I really enjoyed it. I certainly felt accomplished after having finished an entire book in Spanish, but we read the book very quickly, and we were also doing other projects and assignments while we were reading it, so sometimes I felt like I didn't get as much time as I wanted to focus on the actual reading.
Reading in Spanish, like, it gives you a new sense of the language and like how like some dialogue would work in the like real Spanish-speaking world. But it also provides you with a challenge because there's a lot of words that you don't know.
It's pretty hard. Yeah.
Why?
Because sometimes there are words you don't know, and then you gotta figure it out. So.
And it's like kind of different from reading in English because even though like we know words itself, it's kind of hard to put them all together sometimes.
I love reading as a group and then discussing as a class.
I love reading when the teacher calls you and then like you have to read in front of the whole class and as a group too.
I like reading in our little table groups and we have a whole class discussion.
It's different and it's like fun to learn because my mother is Spanish. Well, she's Puerto Rican, so it's like fun. It's like I just want to learn how to speak Spanish. I can like talk to her in different languages and stuff like that.
What I like about reading in Spanish is the fact that it's something different and new.
I like that the sentences we've learned so far are like we're breaking them up into smaller parts, and so the smaller parts there, the quicker they get into your mind and you remember them more.
Like there's more descriptive detail in Spanish than English. It's like fun to read in a different language and like see how they write and experience their culture a little bit more. So yeah.
What I like reading about Spanish is it makes you analyze more as you're reading because you're thinking about a language that isn't English. So to have to like think harder about the lines as you read them makes you come out with a better understanding of what's happening as opposed to English where you might have to go back and reread in order to get the understanding out of it. That just kind of happens automatically when reading in Spanish.
I definitely thought it built up my vocabulary, much like reading in English. I feel like sometimes just reading books helps your vocabulary more than straight up vocabulary practice. I thought the plot was entertaining. I liked the book. And yeah, I think that was, I like reading a lot, so I thought that applied to reading in Spanish as well.
Well, like I said, it like kind of showed me like a new like part of the language because I haven't really done much reading in Spanish before besides last year. So when we did reading in Spanish, I learned a lot from like from how the author wrote the story and from like how the people who were speaking in the story and like kind of how like all the interactions were.
Well, it's kind of fun to see like how I'm improving in Spanish because I know that like if I read the same article 2 years ago, I wouldn't have known like 80% of it, and now I know like more than that.
You learn a lot of new vocab really quickly, and you also learn it in context too. just good for, I don't know, comprehension.
I really enjoy the context of what we're reading about because it's a lot more about the culture instead of just stories like we read in English class.
Also, like, we get into deeper conversations and we use more vocabulary, so we like get to speak more and more Spanish every day.
I like how there are a lot of different topics, like we discuss different things every day, and
Well, the whole reading in Spanish is
What?
pretty dreadful.
Yeah. Why?
Because there's lots of words, and if you know like 2 words in a whole sentence, you just don't know, and then you just gotta keep reading even if you didn't get that first sentence. And it might be like key to the article. Those like few vocab words you just can't put your finger on. So then you might just get something totally different out of the article than what you were supposed to. And then you get up in front of the class, and then you're like, this article was about shoes, and it really wasn't about shoes. And that can be a traumatic experience for kids in Spanish class.
It's not fun because I don't. Oh, it's not. I don't like it. It's hard, and it's like a lot of. It's a long process to get fluent, and it's kind of frustrating. So yeah.
I don't like that in reading in Spanish that there are the accents, because if you say like the accent wrong, then it messes up the word. And also like with some of the letters, like there's R and R, and you have to make sure that they're, the difference between them.
the words that I didn't know and having to go like look them up and take time out of my reading to do that.
Yeah. And what don't you like about it? What was hard about reading in Spanish?
The big words, like trying to learn how to say extraordinary in Spanish and all that.
What did you do when you had a big word?
I asked my teacher to help me.
The amount of having to read in Spanish. Reading in Spanish for me within the course was good. I liked it, but the amount of reading that had to be done was a significant amount, and it just was a little overwhelming at times.
Yeah.
Probably the volume of pages that we had to read every night. We were reading a lot more than I was getting in any other of my classes where we were reading in English. It was a lot of pages per night, which meant I felt like I didn't get as much out of the reading as I wanted to, especially because we were being tested on some minute details from the reading. But I think that was probably the thing that worried or scared me the most, was just that I wasn't going to finish the reading one night or understand everything because I was racing through it.
Well, a lot of the words I've never heard before, so that kind of made it hard for my comprehension sometimes. But most of the time you could like sort of figure out what was going on, but sometimes that like caused a few speed bumps while reading.
The only thing that I don't like is like when you have to like read something really fast. That's just like something I don't like.
Different accents, like you have to know you have to know like the different meanings of the words and like comprehend what you're reading. Well, in English there's a lot harder vocabulary because we're reading like more intense novels and books, and in Spanish class it's like less, it's an easier level of reading, so I guess that's how it's different.
I mean, well, they're really similar, and they both have like a similar way of teaching.
Yeah. All right.
It's a little different because obviously it's not a language you're as familiar with. You're focusing on language more than you're focusing on other aspects of literature as an English class, but there's still, it feels like a mini English class in a way.
Well, there's the obvious of that, it is in a different language, so it takes a lot more time. I found personally that since I was spending so much time on comprehension, just understanding the vocabulary and the sentence structure and the plot, it was harder for me, or it took more effort to look at things like tone or diction, to observe the kinds of things that we would look at in an English class. It was a more basic level of reading because I was spending so much time on comprehension.
Well, because it's like a whole new language. I've been speaking English since I was born, so I know English very well. And Spanish I started just a few years ago, so it's like a lot more difficult to read in Spanish than it is to read in English.
Or is it not different?
Reading in English is actually reading in English. Well, most of the time you're reading small like books meant for Spanish class instead of like real books. Well, now we're reading like newspaper articles, but in English it's like actual literature, and you're learning like your grammar instead of just simple vocab words.
In English class, a lot of the concepts I think might be more difficult just because we're reading at such a lower level in Spanish, but it can seem as difficult because it's as hard to understand because of like new vocab and things like that.
Or how is it the same?
Well, it's the same because you're still like learning new language, you're learning new vocabulary, but it's different because you're reading about totally different topics.
For me, like I don't really see that much of a difference. Just that like the topics change a lot from like being kind of simple to like really, really hard.
Well, we kind of discuss things that we wouldn't discuss in our English or history classes, but I think we go into a lot deeper discussion in Spanish class than in history or English.